Welcome to Marya's Musings. I am Marya, and this is a space to walk with me as I process life, finding meaning, making connections, and offering others the same tools to look within. So, I am Marya, as I said, and this is my show. I also have a show called Pain to Power, which is where I interview others. But on this show, it's really about where the world becomes a mirror, and every reflection is an invitation to heal. And it's me really talking about myself and the things that I am learning through life and sharing them with you because I'm picking up tools that I think everyone needs. So I want you to think, are you working yourself to the bone for the wrong reasons right now? A lot of us are. A lot of us are working ourselves to the bone, and it's not for the right reason, right? So today, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about productivity or perfection, the hustle that hurts. And if you haven't done it yet, my friends, you know the drill. Subscribe right down here to this YouTube channel. You will get all the updates of what is happening with me and the shows that I'm producing, like Marya's Musings and Pain to Power, which is my interview show, which is a talk show in its fifth season every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And make sure that you hit the bell, like, and share a comment. Friends, you have no idea how long this goes. Share a comment, a smile, a happy face, claps, I don't care, or really, honestly, what resonates with you. But you're helping me out with the algorithm, and you are telling me you're here, you're listening, you're watching, and maybe what I'm saying is resonating with you. So, yeah, today we are talking about productivity or perfection, the hustle that hurts. And the reason we're talking about this because in the last few weeks, this idea of productivity has really been sitting with me because I have noticed my own patterns. And let's be honest, folks, that's where most of Marya's musings begin, is when Marya is like, why am I doing that? Because it's not really working well for me. So, yeah, over productivity. And I know productivity isn't bad. And normally we're like, that's good. I'm productive. And I know I've sent many of those texts where people ask me, how's your day? Great. I was productive. Yes. Except that my productivity started to be me being like almost over productive. I was creating and I was doing, but I was creating and I was doing and I was creating, I was doing, and then that was done. And then I was creating something else and I was doing something else. And I was doing a lot. And some of it was on a time frame that needed to be done. And some of it was just my brain constantly going. And when that starts to happen, and what I noticed is not only did that start to happen, but like I didn't know the pause button. And when I had the pause button, I didn't know what to do with it. So, you know what I did? Created some more stuff, right? Like, oh, well, let me do this now then, right? And that's when, for me, and I would say maybe for you, we got to pause and be like, well, why? Why am I overdoing this thing? And for me, it's productivity, but I know everybody has their vices in different places. So it could be indulging too much in something, too much time with someone you don't need to be taking too much time with, or maybe just a habit of something that you know is not the thing that's right for you, right? So for me, it becomes a red flag. And that's when I start to explore myself and have to think about, well, why am I showing up this way? And what is it really saying about me? So, what I started to think about was, productivity is something connected to this idea of perfection and perfectionism, which, let's break that down a little bit, friends. Perfectionism is, if you aren't aware, and maybe you are, is actually one of the characteristics of white supremacy culture because it is the idea of something being perfect. That means there's one way and there is that height of what it looks like. And if you are not at that height of what it looks like and it is not at that point, then it is not valuable. So It's a characteristic. And yeah, it's white supremacy culture, but what we're really talking about is dominant culture. And we're talking about the dominant culture that anybody, regardless of whether or not you are white or brown or black or of other ethnicities, you can actually subscribe to. So perfectionism, I will tell y'all folks, is the one that often comes up for many people of color and white people and everybody essentially. But why is this so bad for us when it comes to healing? So yes, that's about race, that's about culture, that's about identity, but it also impacts our healing. And that's because, let's unpack this perfectionism. Well, I'm going to pack it for you, for me, right? My perfectionism shows up as productivity because I believe, and I have learned this about myself over time, is if I am not producing something, creating something, doing something where I prove my worth through my perfectionism feeling, I am not of worth. And that came from patterns of relationships where if I didn't show up being something for someone else, doing something for someone else, completing something for someone else, or just proving my value, I wasn't valued. So now I produce, and not just shows. Bum. Had to be a little funny, y'all. You know how I am. But I produce. I produce creative things. I produce analytical things. I produce things that can be monetized. I produce things that have nothing to be monetized. I produced ideas. I produce because it is how I have learned to prove my value. There's a little fruit fly flying around. It's going to drive me crazy. So y'all just bear with me if it bothers me at any point. So why is this so bad? Because perfectionism for me shows up like that. But I would say that what I have learned and what I have studied and what is going to be Marya's musings today is how perfectionism shows up in men and women in different ways. So for women, I kind of gave some of it to you, but it's this idea that I can do it all. I'm perfect. I can do it all. I can be a mother. I can be a professional. I can show up in relationships. I can be fancy and free, but I can also be professional. And, I know how to look perfect. I know how to show up and do the work well. All the things of perfectionism that women show up with. But men, y'all have your own ways. And tell me if I'm right or wrong. This is my own understanding of learning through a new book I've been reading, but also through conversations with many different men, including my own boys. For men, perfectionism is your need to show up in protection and providing. And when that is questioned or when that isn't happening, say, for example, like what's going on in the world right now, so many men are in positions of being furloughed, of not having income coming in, or potentially having issues with other things, right? Like that they can't provide. They can't show up in what is seen to be for men as perfection, which is that strong provider. So here's my thoughts, right? Perfectionism, it's coming up for men and women in two different ways, but it's coming up. And there's an unhealthy thing that comes from it, right? So I want to share a few facts with you. Is in 2025, over 1 billion people globally live with mental health conditions, and that leads to a loss of 12 billion working days each year, costing the global economy about $1 trillion. All right, so we're talking about productivity and perfectionism and how that impacts the bottom line. That also says that 93% of professionals struggle with perfectionism, which fuels stress and burnout, and 42% of employees worry that talking about mental health at work could harm their careers. And what we certainly know is if we don't talk about it, we certainly don't address it. So those stats are showing us how these internalized beliefs are impacting the way that we show up in our productivity and our actual bottom line for businesses, but it also can impact our personal relationships. So, a recent study found that there's a noticeable link between perfectionism and marital issues. I know, friends, right? And come back. Now, I know some of y'all are like, yeah, check. I know that, right? Because often perfectionists set super high standards for their partners, which can lead to dissatisfaction and emotional distance in those relationships. And sometimes it's the internalized perfectionism that believes that we need to do and be it all, which means that we start to then feel resentment for the people who aren't supporting us through that or who don't understand the level of stress or pressure that may be, whether it's as a man when it comes to your protection and providing, or it's as a woman when it comes to the nurturing and the way that you have to show up in all of your many different positions. So, how about you? Think about the last time you felt the need to be productive to prove your worth to others. Was it because you had to prove you were a solid provider? Was it because you had to prove you could do it all? So these are kind of the things that we are thinking about today. And I want to talk to you about this, but I also want to introduce to you, well, how do we address it? Because we don't have to sit there. Identifying our problem is the first thing, but then what do we do with it? This is where I come in to help you. So in addition to Pain to Power, in addition to here, Marya's Musings, where I'm just talking about my thinking and processing, I also have a course. It's called Empowerment Unlocked. And what we're doing is we're getting these tools to understand how do we unpack all these little patterns that come up of ourselves when they come up. Because just like me, even though I've been talking about, working on, using the tools, doing all the stuff for in my healing evolution, I still have things come up. Like this week with all my productivity, because truthfully, I was trying to be perfect in some way or another. So what do we do? This is what we do, friends. This is what we do. Right here, this is my framework. We need to return home to ourselves. Come home to yourselves. But return is more than just knowing ourselves. It's how we know ourselves, what we know about ourselves, and what do we do with that knowledge. So here's my framework that if you enter my course, we'd be talking through and we'd be walking through, and this would help you. But even not, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to give you a little tidbit, a little teaser, friends, so that you come and join me, because it's going to be a journey that you begin and hopefully stay on to just get to know yourself better and return home to yourself. So first off, we have to remember. Remembering is recognizing and understanding this awareness of how have you been socialized? What's the story that you've been told about yourself? What does it mean to be perfect? What's the value in perfection? What's the messages you got as a child when you were? What's the messages you got when you walked into school when you were? What's the messages you got when you weren't? That's remembering. And then we got to examine those. We've got to examine and recognize, well, what have I learned through that about myself? How have I shown up for myself and others because of that? What's harmed me? What's helped me? And then we transform. And transforming is when we shift our mindsets. Then we unlearn. Unlearning is when we change our behaviors. So first the mindsets and our belief systems, and then our behaviors. And that is how we reclaim our story. And now we have empowered ourselves to create the narrative of who we are by remembering who we've always been before the socialization, before the patterns of what others have told us. And finally, we have to nurture all of that. And that means we are loving on ourselves, giving ourselves grace to be imperfect and just authentic. So this is the framework. but I want to talk to you about how this framework has really actually come into me and my life. So let's start with the beginning. The beginning is I knew this pattern. I saw this pattern, but there was a moment where I started to transform this pattern. And story, y'all. You ready for story time? Tell me if you're ready for story time. Let me know in the chat. Put a comment in there if anything's resonating with you, right? So here's my story. My story is when my daughter turned 5, she's now 9, so it was 4 years ago. I celebrated her 5th birthday. And this was the first birthday that I was having after my separation and divorce, the first big birthday party for a child, right? So that means I'm doing it on my own for the first time. So one, the pressure is on just because I'm doing it on my own, right? That's a lot. And let me be clear, on my own doesn't mean fully on my own. I have a huge village that supports me. All 3 of my older boys were like down to be ready to help their sister. My family, my friends, people jumped in. But still, she's my daughter. I'm the mom. I'm the only parent present. I'm the only one who holds that responsibility of what that feels like, of making this everything it needs to be for her in my mind. Because remember, perfectionism. So there's that pressure. Now there's always then the other pressure, which is that I'm doing it. So there are eyes on me. There are judgments. There are always going to be someone who is going to question, wonder, and maybe even talk about with others whether or not it was done well. So I had pressure, right? And there was a moment in this big party, and and then there's the other thing is that my perfectionism and my visionaryism all kind of like combines into this like crazy mom plans I have, and I like to make it big and special. And so it was a whole big party, and we were outside, and I had all of these games planned and coordinated all these things, and just it was a lot, right? So there was an issue with balloons. I had balloons. Okay. There's an issue with the balloons, and I looked at my daughter after a while, and I was like, look, okay, like something is not going to work here. And I was like, I will tell you, Kaya, that's her name. It's like, this is going to be a special birthday, but not everything's going to be perfect. And that's okay. And she looked at me and she was like, yeah, okay, mama. Like, that's fine. This is nice. I'm so happy that we're doing a birthday. Like, I love this and I'm happy. And that has been my daughter from the beginning. She is just like, you don't have to do a whole lot of anything for her. And she is happy and she is at peace, right? But it started to be that from that day on, what we would say and what we still say, and what I bring into my workspaces sometimes in my friendship spaces is nothing will be perfect, but everything will be special. And that statement, that one little statement on her 5th birthday for the birthday party, and the birthday party was special and it was wonderful and she was so grateful, and it was like memories and moments that she still thinks about. And I'll be honest, the last birthday party I had, because y'all, that is a lot of work. Okay, let's be clear. I am not a party planner. That is not my wheelhouse. So that was also the added pressure. I forgot to tell y'all, is not my wheelhouse to plan and execute fancy parties. It's not what I do. I could talk you through it, but I'm not going to do it. But I did with my village and with letting go of perfection. So I transformed my mindset. That was my first piece, right? And since then, I've been working on the unlearning of my behavior in micro moments when they happen, because that's the thing with healing is like, it's never this one and done. Come on now. And if anybody tells you it's a one and done, they are giving you the wrong information, because it is a constant evolution, which means you're constantly seeing almost these same patterns come up in different ways in your life, and you have to face them differently, and you have to recognize them when they come up, and you have to see, well, what do I need to unlearn here, right? So for a lot of mine, it's evolved into productivity in my own workspaces, right? And I have to always stop and be like, well, is this because I really need to do the work, or is this because I'm avoiding something? That's a real question, friends. What am I avoiding? And now I got more questions. And why am I avoiding it? And what do I feel I'm going to get from doing this instead of that? All kinds of questions, because once you start to unravel your patterns, you are compelled to start asking yourself questions. And that's part of unlearning. And it's also part of the reclaiming, because the answers to those questions is when you start to now transform your story. So I'm going to give you the last piece, which is the nurture. Because I've been doing this work and I've been doing it for a minute. But nurture is what I have done this week, because I recognized my pattern. I was able to tap back into what I know is my mindset shift that I needed to have, and reclaim by reframing and thinking about what my actual behavior is going to be, right? I'm unlearning and reclaiming. And now I'm nurturing. So what I know happens with productivity is that, like, I just get like, I'm working, right? There's no joy. I mean, there's joy in the work, because there is joy in the work, but it's work. It's like waking up at like 6 in the morning to do some work, and then going to bed at like 12 at night to do the work before, after the work day, right? Because full-time employed, 4 kids, and this, right? It's a lot. And I have to find the time, because the time is finite in the day, right? Like, that is the one thing I can't find any extra, right? It is what it is, but I got to make it work. But I stopped this week. And I found joy. I hung out with some friends, and I got super fancy and glammed up, and I went and I did something good by attending a fundraising dinner for the United Negro College Fund, and networked, which is what I always do, but I also just got to enjoy, just to feel pretty, to dance and like, let loose. That was my nurture. And I continued into that nurture with some other pieces of things that I know are going to feed my soul, like some art pieces and hanging out with my daughter, and, things that didn't require me to be productive, rather allowed me to just be. And so when we think about productivity and perfection and this idea of the hustle, sometimes it hurts us. Sometimes it pulls us away from our authenticity. Sometimes it makes us forget who we are. So, if you enjoyed Marya's Musings, make sure that you leave a comment, you like, you share with someone else, and that you follow me on all my platforms, and share your comments, right? Like, did I hit the mark? Was this something you thought about? And I want to leave you with a couple of questions, because I got a couple questions here, because all of this should be taking us to reflect on ourselves and think about, so how do you feel when things aren't perfect? Do you notice tension or distance in your relationships because of that? When was the last time you felt the need to overperform, and what belief about yourself was driving that? Was it the idea that if you didn't, you weren't of value, like me, and how I sometimes process it? And how often do you allow yourself to rest without guilt? What would it look like to value yourself beyond what you produce? Oh, I sit with that one a lot, friends, a lot. Because I've been so ingrained through the relationships I've had, through the decisions I've made in my life, that value comes from me producing. But it's not helping me. So I gotta pare it back, transform that thinking, and start making those shifts. And hopefully you can do the same. But share with me, which of these are resonating with you? What's coming up for you? And follow me on everything. I'm on TikTok. I got lots of funny stories and things, and I post stuff on TikTok. Instagram, if you want to follow my stories, I also post a lot of interesting stories so you learn a little bit about me behind the scenes and my life. And of course, Facebook, same thing. But I'm also on Substack because I'm a writer. So all of this whole journey of transforming, of identifying my patterns of perfection, of ego, all the things that we all are working through. Well, I've been writing about them for 5 years. I've been writing and writing and writing. So go and read my blog, www.browngirlinterrupting, or go and read my Substack and follow me on Substack. I need some subscribers, friends. I've only got 60 and I've got 60, not only. I've got 60, but I'm always looking for more. And what else am I on? LinkedIn. Because this is a service. Yes, this is what I do for my courses, but this is the work that I do. This is the work that can impact culture shifts in spaces. This is the work that helps and supports leaders in understanding and knowing themselves. Because when we understand ourselves, and then we have the tools to be able to understand others, we are able to transform environments and change the outcomes around us. So join me for everything. Follow me, like, comment, share, and hit the bell. I'm Marya from Marya's Musings. Thank you for joining me today. And peace, love and light.